Welcome to episode 108 of the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm Aaron Breitman, coming to you on Tuesday, July 11th. And for this episode, I wanted to focus on Rutgers athletics in regard to the 2022-2023 school year, how the department did as a whole in terms of on-field performance, talk about the Directors' Cup standings, how they finished, and also just really kind of weeding through that and looking at the overall outlook of how things project for this coming year. So the Director Cup standings came out, I believe, a couple weeks ago. I meant to get to this sooner, but things were going on and wanted to also have time to kind of evaluate things and look at it because I think that, yes, the Directors Cup standings are very important, but I think also that it gets misunderstood at times in terms of what it measures, right? So the Directors Cup standings measures NCAA championship performance. So you essentially accumulate points. Each program accumulates points based on NCAA performance. So, a win in the first, if you're a team structure, a win in the first round, you get points, second round, Final Four, etc. Individual competition, track and field, swimming and diving, your how you do as a team based on your individual performances weighs into it as well. So Rutgers had a really bad year in that regard. With the Directors Cup, finished 130th, last in the Big Ten. The year before, the 21-22 season, Rutgers finished 48th, program best, the best Rutgers ever done. So obviously, major disappointment to drop that far, to have that kind of setback. Only two teams made the NCAA tournament in the team structure. That was women's soccer and men's soccer, both losing in the first round. You had the year before, where field hockey went far, women's soccer went to the College Cup. Men's soccer did not make it. You had men's basketball, even though they got eliminated in the first round. Wrestling had a better run. And then you, of course, had men's lacrosse that went to the Final Four. Women's lacrosse went to the second round. And none of that happened this year. So, of course, you're going to take a step back. What I think that is important to also evaluate, though, because I saw something written that said it was arguably their least competitive year in the Big Ten. Well, that's not really the case in terms of if you look at it from how Rutgers performed in the Big Ten, in Big Ten play itself. Overall, you had men's soccer, women's soccer, and baseball all had winning records in conference play. Basketball finished 10-10. Obviously, basketball was a disappointment overall. They were doing really, really well, and then the Moat Mag injury, they just missed the NCAA tournament. It was disappointing. I think basketball is actually a great kind of example of the athletic department as a whole. The men's basketball season was disappointing in how it ended, but I would not say that, I think the biggest thing with the athletic department, if you look at any of the programs, there's not one program that cratered, that completely fell apart, that had a terrible, terrible year. You had noticeable improvement with softball, with women's basketball. Two programs that the year before were pretty bad. Both had much better seasons. You had men's soccer, women's soccer, baseball still have very good seasons in conference play. Women's soccer obviously disappointed in the NCAA tournament. Baseball disappointed in the Big Ten tournament and not, they were in the conversation for the NCAA tournament, didn't make it. Obvious step backs for women's lacrosse and men's lacrosse. They had losing records in Big Ten play. They were not as competitive. However, women's lacrosse was 1 win away from making the NCAA tournament, and men's lacrosse was 1 to 2 wins, I'd say, away. 1 probably from the bubble, 2 from making it. So, again, disappointing, but not devastating. Neither of, all of those programs, nobody cratered. Then you have field hockey, same thing. Step back, went 3-5 in the Big Ten, wasn't that far off from making the NCAA tournament. Wrestling had a step back, still sent 7 qualifiers, did not have the type of, did not have multiple All-Americans, did not have any All-Americans this year. As a team, was not as competitive in the Big Ten. Certainly a down year for wrestling, no doubt. But again, it wasn't a devastatingly bad year either. I think the positive in all this is our expectations have grown for Rutgers athletics, and that is a huge positive. they didn't meet expectations this year, because as you have better and better seasons and better years, the expectations go up, and they weren't able to come close to what they had done the year before as an athletic department. Football was down as well, right? Only one win in conference play. You did see some positives with gymnastics, with track and field, with swimming and diving, where they're not in the Big Ten standings, right? There's no team records per se, but gymnastics continue to have success in terms of besting their program records, in terms of individual events as a team, also meet records. They sent, Hannah Joyner once again to regionals. You had track and field, had qualifiers for both the NCAA indoor and outdoor championships. You had Big Ten champions for both. Swimming and diving made progress as well. So that's all positive. So again, Directors Cup, yes, very disappointing. It was not a successful year from a Directors Cup standpoint. In the big picture point of view with Rutgers athletics and how are they competitive in the Big Ten? They are still competitive in more sports than not. Volleyball continues to struggle. Head coach Kristen Schweihofer has, I've said, probably the hardest job at Rutgers. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this year. Added some new talent there. Big Ten is so brutal in terms of volleyball, but a lot of reasons for optimism with men's soccer and women's soccer going into the fall. Both programs have almost all of their major contributors. Men's soccer lost a few. Obviously MD Myers, Big Ten Player of the Year, Pablo Avila, also lost Hugo Leganek, but they have a lot of key players. Multiple double-digit guys. 3 all freshmen last year are back. Ian Abbey, Kieran Dalton, and then of course I'm forgetting someone on the top of my head, but you have Jackson Temple back. You have Jason Borgi, who was second team all Big Ten last year. You had Cole Crothers was co-Big Ten freshman of the year. He's back. You have Chris Tao back. You have 10, 11 guys that played big minutes for that program last year that are all back. Women's soccer, they lost, Megan McClelland in goal, but virtually everyone else is back. McClelland's a huge loss in goal. They got to figure that out, but everyone else is back. Emily Mason, Riley Tiernan, Samantha Kroger, Allison Lynch, so many staples in that program that have been there for so long are all back. Allison Lowry, they're going to be really good once again. So both men's and women's soccer have a chance to have even better years this coming year. Football, we're optimistic. Anything more than one conference win is going to be more competitive. Obviously, for in terms of Directors Cup, you have to make a bowl game. So that did happen 2 years ago as well. But listen, we just want to see them more competitive. We want to see them qualify for a bowl. Volleyball, remains to be seen. Field hockey, definitely a little bit of a different mix. They have some returners. They have some new players as well. Field hockey is really competitive in the Big Ten, but head coach Emeritus Civico has done a great job there, and I expect them to be competitive. And they have a chance to be better than last year as well. Then you go into winter. Wrestling, I think, has done a great job this offseason in terms of adding probably 3 starters in terms of Jacob Butler. You have Soldano back, but Jacob Butler. You have Mitch Moore, both Oklahoma transfers, and then you have the Harvard heavyweight Yaroslav Slavkowski. Those are 3 starters that are in the program now, and I think there's reason for optimism that Rutgers is going to be better on the mat next winter. Men's basketball, a little bit of a wait and see. Obviously, huge losses with Mulcahy and Cam Spencer. But you have Fernandez, you have Griffiths, you have Omori back, you have Derek Simpson year 2. Moat Mag sounds like is in doing well in his rehab. Steve Peichel talked this week with Adam Zagoria at the Peach Jam and was pretty optimistic about him being ready. Start of the season, we'll see. I think it's still probably early to know for sure, but obviously positive signs there. still waiting to add to the roster. I think we'll get some news on that soon. But I think Rutgers still on paper is going to be competitive. It remains to be seen in terms of how they fill out the roster. But I think they'll be fighting for an NCAA tournament berth. Women's basketball is going to be better, no doubt. You had Maya Petticourt, the transfer from Texas A&M. You also add Destiny Adams, former five-star McDonald's All-American. You have 6 of your 8 top contributors back from the year before, including Kayleen Smichael and China Cornwell. They're going to be better. Are they going to make the NCAA tournament? I think that's still a stretch, but they're going to be more competitive in the Big Ten. So again, they're going to be more competitive in the Big Ten. That's not necessarily going to reflect in the Directors' Cup if they don't make the NCAA tournament. But how is Rutgers competitive in the Big Ten? For me, at the end of the day, we want them to win championships. We want them to compete in the NCAAs. But at the same time, are they competitive in the Big Ten? Women's basketball is going to be better. Wrestling, I think, is going to be better. Men's basketball is a wait and see, but I think they'll still be competitive. Gymnastics, they're going to have to replace Joyner, but there's a lot of talent infused in the program. I think every year they just keep getting better and better under head coach Ume Salim Beasley. Track and field has a lot of athletes back for indoor and outdoor swimming, and diving continues on a positive trajectory. And then you go into the spring, and it's a little bit early to really know. Baseball is still constructing the roster. Men's lacrosse has a lot of turnover. Women's lacrosse has turnover, but all 3 programs have really good head coaches, and Melissa Lehman, Steve Owens, and Brian Brecht. So again, all 3 had step backs this year, but all 3 are, I think, stable, have really good coaching staffs, and have opportunity for improvement next year. So while 2022, 2023 was a disappointment, both in the director's standings and overall as a view in terms of performance on the field, I don't think there's any reason to be down on Rutgers athletics and any of these programs long term. Obviously, we know NIL is a factor. Rutgers tweeted some information on NIL today in terms of how to learn more, how to get involved. The collectives are working on initiatives as well. But I think that majority of the programs are recruiting at a high level. I think the coaching staffs in place are really good. And I think that the future is still bright as a whole, both for individual programs and the athletic department as a whole. Completely fair and warranted. I know I'm disappointed in how this last year went. I think there was some injury issues with several programs as well, but it's a critical year for sure. 23-24 is very important for Rutgers to show that 21-22 was not a fluke. 22-23 was a step back. 23-24 is going to be another step forward. I think that things are in place. Like I said, I think the fall, you're going to see women's and men's soccer take step forwards and be 2 of the better teams in their respective conferences. And both I think both can be nationally ranked for sure and make the NCAA tournament and make a run. I think field hockey, is going to be competitive. I think football can be better. And volleyball, I hope, will be better. But I'm going to have Coach Schweihofer on the pod before the season. But I really have to research more. I can't just, I'm not going to just shoot from the hip. And it is such a monster conference in terms of volleyball. And then, like I said, winter, reason for optimism with women's basketball, men's basketball. Let's see how they fill out the roster. But I do think that there's some pieces to like there. I think it's going to be a matter of, depth and getting through injuries. But I think talent-wise, the roster's improved. How it all fits together is going to be, I think that trip in August is going to be critical for that. Then you have wrestling, I think, is on the rise. And then spring is really going to be probably the ultimate in terms of, how much of a step forward can Rutgers make in the Directors' Cup and also just overall as a department with men's lacrosse, women's lacrosse, and baseball. But again, optimistic for all 3 programs. Thank you for listening and watching once again here at the Scarlet Faithful. Check all my content at thescarletfaithful.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I just started Threads now. We'll see how that goes. But appreciate everyone watching and listening once again, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.